Now you might say, well, GM philosopher, I've already said that to my players. I said that at session 0. Okay. Did you know that in business data, I've read a lot of business books. It has been shown that employees in a company and even middle management leadership need to hear a new policy 7 times before they hear it the first time. This is just the nature of humans. So even if you said it at session 0, there's a good chance it might be forgotten about. But if you remind everyone at the beginning of the session, there's much more chance they're going to retain it and act on it. Hello friends, welcome back to GM Philosophy in the Morning. I'm the GM Philosopher, and today we need to talk about something. We need to talk about those quieter players and how to engage them, guys. We all know that at every D&D table, there are some players who are more naturally able to jump in and grab the spotlight, and there are some players who they just struggle with it more. They are kind of more in the background. Sometimes it's because of shyness. Sometimes it's because of introversion. As a GM, how can you actually jump in and engage these players and make it more awesome for them? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this video, guys. Sometimes, now, I'm going to be honest. I have a huge love for the players who jump in and they become assertive in taking the spotlight in a scene. I love this. In fact, I feel like these are the easiest players to GM for. But notice I didn't say best. We all know that our quiet players have some crazy awesome magic to bring to the game. But what if they never get a say? What if they never actually find the time to jump in? You may get out their amazing insight, their amazing ideas, their amazing role play, and guess what? There also may come the unfortunate likelihood that they may grow disillusioned with the game and even leave if you do not engage them enough. All the while, they were brimming with creativity, but they just needed your help to get it out. Friends, this actually happens. As game masters, we have a responsibility to our players. We have a responsibility to help our players get into the spotlight, and sometimes this means prompting them, checking on them, drawing it out of them. So what does that mean? Today, I want to solve the silent table crisis with a simple thesis. Silence does not always mean that the player character doesn't have something to say or that they don't want to do something. It means that they may not feel like they can, or they're not comfortable doing it, or they're waiting for the right moment. And you as a GM, if you can cross that bridge and invite them in a proactive way, it can solve that crisis. I'm going to describe how I go about this, okay? Now, first of all, let's talk about the psychology of silence for just a moment, okay? I want to talk about shyness, okay? This isn't just a personality thing, okay? Some players are shy for a number of reasons, and shy isn't even always the accurate word. Sometimes players just don't feel like they can say a thing. Sometimes they feel like they're going to be ruining the game for someone else if they jump in. Sometimes they feel like it takes a lot of energy to jump in and they get overwhelmed when a lot of people are talking. This is especially true with virtual tabletops. I've had players feel overwhelmed by people constantly jumping in and over talking each other, and so they just back off and they don't say anything. And if I wouldn't have checked in on them and made sure to advocate for them to get a voice in, they may not have ever said anything. And who knows, they may have even left the game if it was bad enough, right? This unfortunately can happen, but as GMs, we need to be very mindful of this, okay? There are also cases where if you push a quiet player too much, right, they might feel put on the spot. They might feel too much pressure. So there's a magic line there. We can't just, push players into the spotlight, but we also can't just step back and just think nature is going to sort itself out sometimes. This sounds like such a strange thing. There's also a balance here where you do not want the quiet players to feel like you are having to do all this work to get them in the spotlight. And I hope I'm not making that a feeling in this video even, because it's not. I love quiet players. And the history of me running games, which I've been running games for 24 years now, and I've been running pro games since the 1st of January, which, by the way, if you want to join one of my pro games, come join us. Links in the description. My games are pretty much full. I do have an open game on Thursday morning, but I'm thinking about moving that because I've had some players talking to me about moving it to a different day. But anyway, here's the thing, guys. I'm not trying to say that quiet equates to bad player or anything like that. What I'm trying to say is we have a delicate tightrope. We do need to advocate for the shy and quiet players. We don't want to push them too hard, right? We also don't want to make them feel like we are like having to work to get them in. We want them to feel welcomed. We want to welcome them in. Okay. Now, I feel like I've adequately explained the tightrope and the psychology of that. Okay, so let's move on to the next part of this. The tactical game master intervention. Okay, now these are some actual techniques that I use for engaging quiet players, and I've had players who Maybe they're not as vocal. Maybe they don't want to jump in as much. Maybe sometimes they're waiting for the right moment, and the GM prompt can be a great time. Maybe they're legitimately shy and they're nervous to speak up. So the GM jumping in to say, "Hey, what are you going to do next?" Like prompts them and gives them the courage, the boldness to go ahead and do it. Whatever it is, right? There could be many, many reasons why a player isn't as verbal of their own volition as other players. But here are the techniques I use for dealing with this. Number one, the pause and check technique. Okay, I try not to let too much time go on without checking on at least every single player character. So if I haven't heard from a player in and usually my period of time tends to be roughly 5 to 7 minutes. I literally have an egg timer sitting on my desk that sometimes I'll turn over at the beginning of dialogue, just so I can kind of keep track of where we are on the timeline. If I haven't heard someone talk in 5-ish minutes, I might say, okay, now let's go to so and so. I haven't heard from you in a moment. What is your character doing right now, right? Or what is your character doing while this is going on, right? So I'll kind of silence everyone else and bring them in. This is probably the most powerful tactic. And if they say nothing, I'm just listening, then I'll make a mental note of that and I'll be like, very well, now let's go and go back to this blah, 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 right? But I'll make a mental note of that, because I will say this, for most quiet players, just pausing and checking on them is usually enough. In about 85% of cases, that's usually good enough. But I will say this, sometimes it is not enough. And that can be tricky, because sometimes when you do pause and check on a player, they are already, and I know this might sound weird to those of us who are game masters who are always talking. Well, this may sound weird to us, but sometimes when you stop and you check like that, they may already be a little frustrated that they haven't gotten in yet. And so they need a moment, right? They're not ready to jump in. It doesn't mean they don't have anything to say, but they may not be emotionally there. Number two, sometimes they do want to say something, but even though you're prompting them, they may feel like you're kind of putting them in the spotlight, putting them in a pressure situation, right? So they may still not say anything. So what I'm saying is, if that pause and check doesn't actually result in them being heard, make a note of that, because we're going to come back around to it. Okay. Now, in person, you can do really cool things. Garrick in our Discord channel, which by the way, if you haven't joined the GM Philosophy Discord, join it. Links in the description. We are over 600 Game Masters strong. Empowering Game Masters run better games is the goal of that community, just like it is of this channel. So make sure you jump in and hang out with us. It's free, and there's a lot of cool stuff going on there every day. Lots of great discussions about stuff like this. But Garrick has talked about, to the quieter players, he'll prepare little physical things, like little physical clues or a note from a stranger or something. And while everyone else is talking, being loud or whatever, he'll slide that note to one of his quieter players. I sometimes do this on Discord. I will type a message to my virtual players and I'll send it through Discord, right? And then it's like, ooh, what's going on? Or while other players are role playing, being very active, I will tag them in the private group chat and I will say, so-and-so, roll me an insight check. Right. So I'll just kind of prompt that way. Right. Asking them for a check leads to another thing. Sometimes saying, so-and-so, what are you doing? If that doesn't work, we're going to come back around. And maybe 2 minutes later, you say, so-and-so, roll me a perception check, or so-and-so, roll me a quick insight check while this is going on. Now you're not asking them to take control of the spotlight, so to speak. You're doing a less pressuring thing. You're asking them to perform a simple little check, which will lead to them seeing something, and that might inspire them or make them feel excited enough, make them feel bold enough to go ahead and follow through with it, especially since you set it all up. So, what I'm saying is sometimes it's high pressure to ask them to invent the thing they want to do. If they're in a moment of, withdrawnness, if they're in a moment of shyness, if they're in a moment of being a bit of an introvert, if they're a little frustrated or they're already a little flustered, then sometimes it's a lot of work to ask them to invent the thing they want to do. But asking them for something less, like make me a check, can work its way into them being a vital part of the session without being high pressuring, right? So that's another thing. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about player responsibility in regards to other players. I think that it's a fantastic thing to do before every session to remind players. Now, above table, I just want to let everyone know that, at this table, we have many awesome role players. However, I would like to remind everyone that at this table, we want to foster collaboration and working together. So I'm just giving everyone a little, above table, little request. If you are going to go into some deep role play or do a spotlight heavy thing, maybe bring another character with you. Invite others into your scene to help spread that spotlight love. I sometimes do this in my games. I don't do this in all of my games or at all of my sessions, but sometimes, friends, I do have some groups that this is a good thing to remind them of. And it can be very helpful to do that. So making it a player responsibility and then reminding players of it is really important. Now you might say, well, GM Philosopher, I've already said that to my players. I said that at session 0. Okay. Did you know that in business data, I've read a lot of business books. It has been shown that employees in a company and even middle management leadership need to hear a new policy 7 times before they hear it the first time. This is just the nature of humans. So even if you said it at session 0, there's a good chance it might be forgotten about. But if you remind everyone at the beginning of the session, there's much more chance they're going to retain it and act on it, right? So that's a thing. Important things I like to bring up like that. Some characters are really good at bringing other characters into the spotlight. When they do this, reward them. Reward their generosity with the spotlight with some heroic inspiration or some bonuses or something like that. Because when we reward players for doing things that make the game better, our games go in a better direction. They trend in a better direction, right? Now, I want to talk next about how to kind of help structure sessions to succeed at this, okay? Obviously, when you incorporate player backstories into your games, and once again, we're specifically talking about quiet players here, this can give you opportunities to bring hooks in that they're going to be way more interested in, that they're going to cause them to light up and be like excited about. There are some players out there who are really, really good at just kind of asserting themselves onto the game world, and they're going to create adventure no matter what happens. And these are, I would say, like in general, there's an element that's easier running games for these players in the sense that they will not really, withdraw and disconnect if you do not bring them in. However, the challenge with the more assertive players is that they can overrun the spotlight and they can sometimes have main character syndrome and they can drown out the quiet players. So, and then it can be hard to bring quieter players in when those players are in the midst of it. But that's the challenge, right? As GMs, we have a responsibility to kind of equalize that spotlight and also to manage those levels of integration to a point where we at least give quieter players a minimum amount of screen time. So one thing we can do is that we can bring player backstories in for the quieter players, bringing those character backstories in and kind of saying, hey, this thing, you notice this. And then you like literally bring in a character from their background or a long lost relative shows up, right? This can give them something to role play with that is uniquely theirs, where they are the ones with the answers and the information, where they're the ones with the emotional leverage or whatever. And it can maybe sometimes bring them out enough that they'll care enough that they'll get more assertive about it. And so bringing in those narrative hooks from the backstory can be a really, really great way to create more emotional resonance with them, which will translate to them maybe being more willing to jump in and to respond when you check on them to come in with a thing. Speaking of that, building emotional resonance is crazy important. I have a whole book about this. It's called The Advanced Art of TTRPG Game Mastery, 24 years of running games packed into 50 pages. Make sure you grab that. It's my whole thesis on building games that players are emotionally connected to, that they're going to want to come back to again and again for about the price of a cup of coffee. You can grab that. And I doubled down on this. Really, the sequel to this book is my newest book, the Paid GM Guidebook, What I've Learned Running Pro Games. So I take it to a whole nother level about structuring games, player retention, etc., how to actually run pro games. They'll not only be profitable, but that will stay together, that your players will love. Build yourself such an amazing pro game empire, friends, that it becomes a part or even full-time income for you for about the price of 2 cups of coffee. You can grab that book. Link to that is in the description as well, guys. So make sure you don't miss those. But another thing you can do is you can use what I call the side hustle strategy with quieter players. And this can be during more like downtime. So the way that I handle shopping and players splitting up and such is I sort of arrange it like a TV show. And what I'll do is I will ask every player. So let's say your group is reaching a village or a city and they're going to split up and go shopping. Well, I'll ask every player for their goals through the session and we'll just go through and we'll hit all the goals. But here's what I do for each single goal is I kind of ignore the in-between where they're going and the time stuff, blah, blah, blah. And we treat it scene by scene. So I say, okay, so-and-so, Tommy, you were wanting to go to the blacksmith. Does anyone else want to accompany Tommy to the blacksmith? Like we're ignoring all the in-between, even if players split up, doesn't matter. Who wants to accompany Tommy to the blacksmith? And then you give everyone a chance to do it. So you kind of turn what would be normally these lone player expeditions into group activities. So this is really good. Quiet players still may not participate, but you make a note. First outline item, blacksmith. Oh, are you going? Quiet Sammy? Quiet Sammy says, no, I'm good. Okay. Make a mental note of it. Now, so-and-so wanted to go to the apothecary. Quiet Sammy, are you going to join the group? You ask everyone. It's like, hey, Willie, Larry, Tommy, Quiet Sammy, are you guys going to the apothecary? And everyone is like, yeah, I'm going. And Quiet Sammy says, no, I'm good. Now we're like, okay. As a GM, I'm thinking, this is, okay, we got to do something about this. We can't just let Quiet Sammy sit over here and not do anything, right? This is what I'm thinking about. Now, I'm not trying to force this on anyone. I'm not trying to make Quiet Sammy feel any certain kind of way, but I don't know why Quiet Sammy isn't involving himself, but I want them to be involved. So I'm going to try. Guys, I'm going to try. And then I will deploy what I call the side hustle strategy. If Quiet Sammy doesn't do enough group activities in the split session, something's going to find Quiet Sammy, and they're going to have a session that is specifically theirs. Now, what is this? This can be a callback from their backstory. This could be you saying, okay, while they are at the blacksmith and the apothecary, where is Sammy going? Like, what is Sammy doing, like, while that's happening? Now, this might seem, again, a bit pressuring, but, the thing is that, unless they just say, no, I'm not doing anything. Like in this specific situation, I have never, in my whole 24 years of running games, not had a player at least volunteer something. So when they volunteer it, boom, you jump in and run with it. You say, while you're doing that, make me a perception check. Maybe they witness someone getting pickpocketed, or maybe they witness someone trying to bully someone else, or, something like that. Maybe they witness or overhear someone at the tavern talking about the other party members, talking about how they're going to rob them later, right? So this is what I call a side hustle strategy. If they don't go with the main group, if you can't get them to buy into the main group, give them a side quest, give them a little side thing, okay? This, I think, works really, really well. Okay. Now, there's also some other things that I want to talk about with this. It's important to understand that, we cannot mind read. We don't know why a person isn't jumping in and taking spotlight. We have no idea. Sometimes between sessions, sending a little message to your quiet players and saying, hey, I just wanted to check in. You are a little more quiet during the session than some of the others, right? We're just going to call a spade, and we're just going to say, personally, I try, and then you can tell them the stuff you try. Personally, I try these things to engage you, but I would be curious. I would like to know what your thought process is, and are these things good, or would it be better to do something else? And if so, what is that? Just ask them. Be sometimes the most normal human behavior is the best one. Sometimes it's well, I wish I knew what they thought. Well, how about ask them what they think? Sometimes it's the obvious thing that we're not doing that is the best thing. And another thing to take into account, and I've actually had some comments recently that made me aware of this. Some players are still learning the basics of the game, especially if they're new to TTRPGs. So if you have a newer player, they may be still trying to figure out how to role play in a TTRPG setting. They may still be trying to figure out their character sheet. They may be spending, 15 minutes being really quiet, but maybe it's because they're reading their character sheet and trying to understand a spell, or maybe they're trying to understand the flowchart of their combat or something. It may not be that they're not engaged. It might just be that they're engaged in something different. You never know. And that's why we don't want to pressure anyone or make them feel bad for not being a part of it, right? So it is a tightrope we got to walk, but there you go. There's my dissertation on that. Now, guys, the goal here at GM Philosophy is to empower game masters to run better games. So, with that being said, I hope you have found this helpful. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think about this. Hit that thumbs up button. Hit that subscribe button. And friends, make sure you come back and watch more videos in the future. I'm the GM Philosopher. Roll some D100s for me at your next game, guys. And I will see you on the next one.